Welcome back, Bearded Nation. Bearded Brother Matt here with yet another Trade Dissection. This week, as I promised, I did my first ever 3-team trade. I had hoped it was going to be a blockbuster, and it could have been, but when I cut down into it, I was thoroughly unimpressed. However, I promised to do it, and honestly, one team did make out like bandits. Which one? Well, let's go and talk about it. So this is going to be the Eric Dickerson Trade Dissection. For you youngins out there, I probably need to explain who Eric Dickerson is. I'm not going to do that. Instead, I'm just going to give you a number. 2,105. That's how many rushing yards Dickerson put up in 1984 in only 16 games. By the way, 2097 and 2012 by all-day Adrian Peterson was the closest anyone has gotten since. And he did that in 16 games. Now, with the 18-week, 17-game schedule, I feel like it's only a matter of time before someone surpasses it. But maybe not. The league's starting to become very pass-based, so who knows? Dickerson would end his career with 13,259 rushing yards. He was elected to the Hall of Fame in 99, and in 2019 was one of only 12 running backs elected to the 100th anniversary all-time team. However, there was a time when he and his team, the LA Rams, came to cross purposes involving money, and so LA decided enough was enough, and it was time for a change. The Colts came calling. However, in order to make a trade work, the Colts would need to do a little bit of creative maneuvering. So they called the Bills. See, the Colts had just taken second overall a linebacker named Cornelius Bennett. And he said he would never sign with the Colts. Hey, that kind of sounds familiar. Sean Elway! I'm sorry, I had something in my throat there. So they traded him to Buffalo for a 1988 first-round pick, 14th overall, a 1989 first-round pick, 26th overall, and a 1989 second-round pick, 53rd overall, and running back Greg Bell. For that, Buffalo got the rights to sign Cornelius Bennett. The Colts would swing around and give all of that plus a 1998 first-rounder, 20th overall, a 1988 second-rounder, 47th overall, and a 1989 second-rounder, 45th overall, and backup running back Owen Gill to the Rams for Eric Dickerson. Okay, so let's start with the whack of stuff. What did the Rams do with all of this? Because that's a lot of stuff. The Rams should have done amazing with all of that. Well, you have to scout well, and then you have to pick well. And with all of those picks, the Rams should get something right. Right? Well, let's talk about the players first. Owen Gill and Greg Bell. Boop. So, Owen Gill. Owen Gill was a backup running back. Played one game. One game for the Rams. And was out of football the next season. Greg Bell, on the other hand, did quite well for a very short period. In 88, after the trade, he tossed up 1,212 yards and 16 touchdowns. The 89 season, he put up 1,137 yards and 15 touchdowns. Fantastic. Then he tried to hold out for more money, and we all know what the Rams do when you get cross with them with money. They trade you. And this time, they traded Greg Bell to the Los Angeles Raiders for an undisclosed draft pick. Okay, look. I 100% tried to find what that pick was, and I couldn't figure it out. If anybody knows what they got, great. If anybody knows what the Rams did with it, thanks. Give me a tell. Let me know. I have no clue. I looked around, and on all the research I did, I couldn't find anything. It's hard when you go back into the 70s and 80s to find reliable information on what was picked. Most of the sites I use don't really start picking up what happened to draft picks until, like, the 91, 92 seasons. So, I looked. I couldn't find anything. However, on the Raiders, he would promptly disappear as he was sharing touches with Marcus Allen. And then Greg Bell was out of the league the following year. Oops. So, let's talk about these picks. The picks. Okay. 1988 first-round pick was Gaston Green, a running back. Never lived up to being a first-round pick in any capacity. Eventually, they would trade him, along with a fourth-round pick in 91 that was 89th overall and would become Derek Russell, to the Broncos for Gerald Perry and a 1991 12th-round pick, 311th overall, that would become Jeff Pahukoa. Perry was an offensive tackle, and he was actually decent. He wasn't horrible. He was decent. He would leave in free agency, as would Pahukoa. Gaston Green would immediately go ahead and throw up over 1,000 yards in Denver. In fact, he would throw up 1,037 yards and 4 touchdowns. In the next season, he'd only come back with 648 yards and then was out of football. So, yeah, never really lived up to being the 14th overall pick. The 1988 first-round pick, 20th overall, was used on wide receiver Aaron Cox. Very unimpressive career as a wide receiver. Never actually did anything. And he would leave in free agency and play one moribund year in Indianapolis before being out of football. The 1988 second-round pick, 47th overall, was used on linebacker Fred Strickland. Never went anywhere, never did anything else. 1989 first-round pick, 26th overall, used on running back Cleveland Gary. He would leave for Miami in free agency and be very unimpressive. The 1989 second-round pick, 45th overall, was used on linebacker Frank Stamms. Now, he would be traded. Stamms wasn't horrible, but he struggled to stick in the lineup full-time. He would be traded to the Browns for an 8th-round pick in 93, 209th overall, and with that, they would pick up Ma'a Tonavasa. Okay, that's a name that some people might recognize, especially if you're from the Denver area. Why? Because he was with the Broncos for both their Super Bowl championships and started at defensive end for the 98-99 Super Bowl winning season. So, when they traded him, the Rams must have traded him to Denver and they got a good deal. Right? Nope! They didn't trade him. They lost him for nothing. Because they threw him on their practice squad and he was signed off of it by Denver. They lost him for nothing. The 1989 round 253rd overall pick was used on cornerback Darrell Henley. 12 picks, 250 tackles. Serviceable? I mean, playable? Not great, but playable. That's it. That's all they got. And that was very boring. So, I wanted to see what they could have done with those picks. With the 14th overall pick, instead of Gaston Green, they could take the guy who was drafted next. Wide receiver Anthony Miller. He had a career total of 9,148 receiving yards and 63 touchdowns. That kind of plugs a hole in the wide receiver area. Now, 20th overall, they drafted wide receiver Aaron Cox. Well, you've already addressed that because of Miller. So you need a running back, or you think you need a running back. Okay, let's see, who could you draft here? Oh, I know. How about Hall of Famer Thurman Thomas? Yeah, he was still available. He wouldn't go until the late second round, mid-second round. Late, mid, somewhere in there. However, Thurman Thomas. What? Okay. So now you've got your running back of the future. All right. So now, the 47th overall pick in 88. You drafted a linebacker. So you obviously think you need an outside linebacker. Is there a better one than the one you drafted? Oh, yes, there is. How about Bill Romanowski, the RoboCop? He had a career that saw him make 1,116 tackles, 39 and a half sacks, 18 interceptions, and 16 forced fumbles. Was he a volatile personality? Yes. Did he win? Absolutely. He won 4 Super Bowls. 2 with the Niners, 2 with the Broncos. Did he have issues when he left the league? Yeah, he kind of did. But the man could play football. All right, so on to the 89 draft. All right, so that 26th overall pick, you don't really need an RB anymore because, Thurman Thomas. So what else could you use? How about a defensive back? I don't think that there is a cornerback worth being drafted this high here. I know. How about a safety / cornerback? Carnell Lake. 826 tackles, 16 picks, 25 sacks, 15 forced fumbles, 17 fumble recoveries, and 5 defensive touchdowns. Absurdity. Okay, so now you went linebacker at 45 in this draft. But now you don't need to because you've got, the RoboCop. You're good. So how about a pure corner for this one? Robert Massey. 432 tackles, 14 picks, 5 fumble recoveries. That isn't horrible. And now with Carnell Lake on your team, you've got a shutdown secondary. So, what do you do with that final pick? Because you no longer need a corner now because you just picked up Massey. I know, you still have a hole on the line. In fact, you have 2. You have a guard hole and a tackle hole, so whatever you think is worse. But how about Mark Stepnoski? You all might know him as the center for the Super Bowl winning Dallas Cowboys, but he was actually drafted as an offensive guard. And he was recruited out of high school as an offensive tackle. So there's all 3 positions on the line that he can play. Center, guard, and tackle. That covers just about anything you need him to do. All of a sudden now, you have a dude that can open holes for Thomas and protect Everett long enough to get the ball out to Anthony Miller. That's how they win this trade. They didn't do any of that, obviously. And the only guy I've ever seen that did worse with more picks was John Idzik when he drafted 9 times in one draft and none of them stuck. The Idzik 9. Look it up. It's horrible. Do you see now why this frustrates me? Okay. So, on to the rest of this. The Colts. The Colts got Eric Dickerson. Was he any good for them? Well, yeah, for a few seasons. He did what he did for 3 seasons there. Over 1,000 yards per season and fantastic running. Then he hit 30 in the 1990 season and fell off a cliff. Injuries began to pile up, and he just didn't look like the Dickerson anymore. So in 91, after the season, the Colts traded him to the Raiders for a 92 round 4 pick, 105th overall, and a 92 round 8 pick, 212th overall. That 4th round pick would become Tony McCoy. 23 sacks, 245 solo tackles as the primary defensive tackle for the Colts for several seasons. That's not bad. That's a little decent career out of a round 4 guy. The 8th rounder became running back Ronald Humphrey. Played 2 seasons in Indy. Only 2 seasons in the NFL. Mostly a backup running back and a return guy. So, basically an 8th rounder. And that's where this ends. Not bad. But, meh. Kind of meh. The final guy we have to talk about is Cornelius Bennett for the Bills. He had a career that saw him get 1,190 tackles, 71 and a half sacks, and 31 forced fumbles. Absolutely absurd. He played in 5 Super Bowls, 4 with Buffalo and 1 more with Atlanta. Whew! However, we cannot tell this story without talking about the dark cloud off in the distance here. You see, in May of 97, Bennett was arrested after performing, quote, vicious acts of sexual assault, unquote, to a woman at a Hyatt Regency hotel in Buffalo. He would be ordered to spend 60 days in jail, have 3 years of probation, a $500 fine, 100 hours of community service, pay $617 for the woman's medical bills, and to undergo anger management therapy as part of a plea deal that saw him enter a guilty plea. In 2010, he announced that upon his death, he will donate his brain to science for CTE research. So what happened to him when he left the Bills? He left in free agency and went to Atlanta. They didn't get anything for him. So, that's kind of where this whole thing ends. So, who won? Let's be real. Buffalo got a generational linebacker for the prime of his career. They won. Despite everything else that happened, Cornelius Bennett was the winner with the Buffalo Bills. LA could have won this deal, as we demonstrated, if they'd made better picks. But honestly, with the way they did pick, they would have been better if they'd have just tossed all those picks into a pit and lit them on fire. At least they would be warm. The Colts come off a distant second, but they did get 3 pretty good seasons out of Dickerson before he broke down. Not horrible, not Bennett levels of dominance, but not horrible. So that's it for this dissection. Next time, we're going to look at an NBA trade that is both near and dear to my heart. It's a lot bigger than you think it is, and it led to the formation of a Big Three and at least one NBA championship. If you want, you can put your guesses in the comments. Until next time, if you like what we do here and appreciate it, crush the like and the subscribe like Cornelius Bennett sacking a quarterback. Share us with your friends. Stay bearded. Have a wonderful day. Peace!